Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all the learners from Emeritus and Eruditus. We are here again for our guest lecture series by Career Services. I am Sugandha and I will be moderating this session. Now, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box. I'll bring them up at the end of the session. Our guest for today is the SPB, Head of Data Science and Analytics at SG Analytics. Dr. Chirnajiv has 19 plus of years of experience in incubating, leading, and driving data analytics, science, and AI across Fortune 100 organizations such as Nissan Motors, Mercedes-Benz, HP Enterprises, and HSBC Data Analytics. He holds a PhD in applied data science with specific focus on application of artificial intelligence in digital manufacturing across data monetization, production, quality, safety, and customer experience. Dr. Roy, also an advisory member, promotes and guides startups and incubation cells across the world in the field of data-driven product development. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Dr. Chirnajiv Roy. The topic for today is mid-career transition to data science. Mr. Roy, welcome, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you to the management for giving me an opportunity to talk to all of you. And on the evening of Friday, I hope I can be of your use and would be able to give you some of the nuances that I have learned in the last 18-20 odd years. I'm sure there might be multiple people who would have gone in through. Some of you have been currently been working in the data science space. Some of you are trying to transition, but today's topic, as we say, is primarily on moving into data sciences. There are a lot of myths around this, of course, because of the fact that this is one of the most affluent careers today, and anything which is comparatively hotter in the job market, as well as having a hype, comes with a lot of things which become a myth. We'll try to broaden some of them, and these are only my purviews, some of which that I've learned throughout, and what I see in the daily workspace. Just to give you some of my background, I come with a bachelor's and master's in statistics and mathematics, and then I over the course of time, starting from doing credit scoring MISs, right, developing reports, credit scorecards, then moving on to manufacturing sector, working across the industry, developing in different fields, and then pursuing this as a research subject, and parallelly developing products and solutions. Has been a continuous journey, and data science, as we say, right, as any other sciences, is a continuous journey of learning. This journey primarily enhances you to take very smaller steps in this regard, and that is how you are going to step it forward. However, there are different roles which are played. So what are those? So let's look at some of the topics, and we would at the end try to answer some of the questions if I may. Yeah. First of all, one of the things that I normally get asked is, do we need a formal data science degree? So the degree in data science has evolved in the last few years. A formal degree, a master's, a bachelor's, and a PhD, to be precise, has evolved over just a period of time from the perspective. However, you actually do not need a formal data science degree, right? Because an accreditation is always listed as a job requirement in startups and even large corporations or complex overlapping jobs, and you often hire people based on their skill set, willingness, and experience. So if you look at on the right hand side, it's a great organization called Tataiku, which is one of the greater tools we'll talk about it. Yeah, they portray the different roles in data science as the following. So you have vertical experts, right, who are particular in a domain. They have a very strong domain background in finance and banking and insurance, right? And they think outside of the box on standard problems or questions, and that's extremely important. The data science managers understand the tools as well as understand the requirements from the vertical experts, right? And they convert it to the machine learning engineers, statisticians, right? Once a solution is developed, then you have people like dabblers and generalists, right? Who take it and versatile it across, right? The only thing that we talk about, generally everybody talks about, are the legends. Legends are them who are brilliant in programming, right? They do a lot of work. Of course, there is a need to learn programming in the field of data science, but it is not the only thing that you need to learn. So data science is a multidisciplinary field, right? And it requires people from different backgrounds to contribute. That is when a data science product will become successful, or a solution would be utilizable to somebody from that perspective. There is a base background which is required to land up in a job, but you need to become versatile in order to become a successful data scientist. Now, generally, people who have a knowledge of programming get through to data science comparatively faster. But I have seen, and many leaders have also seen, that people coming from different backgrounds as well, they pick up programming on the go. However, there are no code and workflow platforms which have evolved, for example, Azure Machine Learning Studio and so on and so forth, right? Which is making the problem solving much more engineering, right? From the perspective. So you literally do not have to code everything. Please do understand that. As I say, coding has its own advantage. So what you can see on the right hand side below, right, is a differentiation between if you come from a general software development background, right? As I say, data science has evolved, right? Now, if you develop a model or a methodology, right, and even if you come from a Java background, right, there is a great amount of scope, because the newer programming languages, for example, Python, is comparatively very easier to learn in that respect, right? Other than this, a database, right, is a very important thing to learn, right, which is generally done through SQL, right? This will give you an additional advantage in terms of starting up with something that you really need to do. So hence, a data scientist or the data scientist stream, which is combination of data analyst, and then when you put it up or make a product, the software engineering people, right, have a very good combination of having through data analyst and data engineers. So when we develop something, right, or solve a problem, we first develop a prototype so that we can prove that there is a way to solve a problem, right? And we create a hypothesis, and we go through the steps of exploring the data. We quantify the information, and then develop some analogies which are called models, and then we try to automate it much more. In this whole scheme of things, we actually develop a prototype, which, when it gets successful with respect to the business standards or the problem that we are trying to solve, if there is a significant impact which is there, we then need to converge or take it into a product which we call it is a continuous integration and continuous deployment. So you need to first develop a prototype and take it to a product scale. So hence, there is very important for the two roles to converge together well. So hence you can see that the people who do not come from a non-analytical experience background have a lot of larger scope from the perspective. Yeah. It also requires, as and when you pick up things, you should pick up things like data warehousing. How does a database getting designed? How do you distribute things? But everything do not need to be taken by you. And it is not just a single person's job, right? There has to be a data scientist, there are to be data analysts, there are to be data engineers and software engineers who understand the background of the data. So being good at programming has its advantages, but that's not the only advantage that you need to have. So the people who come from a 4 to 8 years of experience, right, and do not even have a data analytics experience has a lot of larger advantage in this space. Now, one of the most interesting and coveted things, right? How do we make an organic data science career transition? Right? So, at a mid-career level, one of the most aspirations is that should I be able to develop some nuances? Do I need to be excellent in Python and programming? Right? Do I need to do everything on my own? Right? How do I get to learn? What is my journey? How should I do it? So when you are at a mid-career level, of course, it is mandatory that you are not a fresher and you are not a pro into that into data and analytics space because you are doing a transition, right? Generally, what I've seen is if you do this 4 phases of your homework, it is comparatively easier, and none of them are discrete to each other. For example, the first thing starts with is where do I stand, which is skill assessment. Right? What are mine? How do I want to assess mine? Which role in data science would I like to go? Right? What do I want to become? Would I want to become a business development professional? Then, or a person who is technologically advanced who can help the salespeople to acquire new clients, customers, and so on and so forth. That's a different role, right? You go after the deals. You need to understand the technologies day in and day out. You need to interact with people, understand, and so on and so forth. So there is a career assessment that you need to do on yourself. You understand your strengths and competencies and values. And you define an objective to you, and you drive that objective till you create a skill assessment for this. Then, of course, the general marketing way of doing things, but it is more interactive when you start developing, and as per the new age, right? It is very important to be social, right? From the perspective. Hence, once you develop an action plan for yourself, there is an action phase. So you create a strategy, your own personal marketing plan, you do your networking, you prepare for the new position, right? And then you seek support in the new position that you would like to go in for. Of course, the journey is not going to be easy. Any transition is never easy from the perspective. But there are methodologies in every step. But yes, your destination and the stations that you are covering are both important and equally related to each other. There are books, there are trainings, seminars, and how much would you get? Those surveys which are all there. There are cheat sheets, right, which are available, right? All of them being doing and through. Those are all there. Another way to switch, which I think is the most easiest way, is whichever field that you are working for, right? In your day-to-day job, and everything is data-driven. That's the best way to switch, because if you can adapt data science and analytics in your day-to-day role, it is comparatively much more easier to scale and make a mark, because I'm sure you would be working in any of the other domains, because data science is a lot domain specific of the nature to start off with. Then you can converge and become much more larger. For example, as I might say, right? So I started with banking, right, and financial services, moved on to manufacturing, right? Starting from automotive, then on to manufacturing. But in a manufacturing scenario, you have more than 10 to 12 verticals: marketing, engineering, supply chain, right, finance, and operations, right, customer experience. There are different domains, and every domain has topics where you can go ahead and solve, and that is where you can bring in your data driven knowledge, which becomes your capability. So this is the most easiest way to do an organic switch from the perspective, if your fundamentals become comparatively clear. One of the, if you want to change jobs, right, networks become comparatively much more easier, right? You join communities, you tune into conversations, you go active forums. Meetups are mostly virtual today, a lot. And over the last 18 months, there have been a lot of diversity into this area, which will help you to know where are the trends going, what are the different ideas, what are the different kind of solutions being employed in solving a particular type of problem, which you can adapt to your domain, right, from the perspective. So that is a very, very important thing from the nature. So transition, which is not easier, there is a tougher way to go through it. There is also a lighter way to start working on your own field in a day-to-day job role, and which is comparatively much more easier. And then learning from the networks that you have, joining forums and the media. Now, on the right hand side that you see is basically an example of one of the tools that we generally very much use, right, in a production environment in data, is Azure Machine Learning. And there are multiple other ones, so I'm not biased about a particular tool, but it's comparatively much more easier. And we'll talk about some of the tools when we go in through. This signifies that if you know the concept, you can solve the problem without even programming to, or with a minimalistic knowledge of programming. Of course, programming has its own advantages. It is very correct. But is it the only thing that would make you a very successful data scientist? No. It is always the skills, the techniques, capabilities, business knowledge, domain experience, and your keen interest to solving a particular problem in a business world, right? In your day-to-day life, one of the things that I always tell is that we should generally try to find time for ourselves to develop our passion, to have 15 to 20% of our daily time in learning, because learning is the only biggest investment that you can do to yourself from the perspective. I know there might be instances and issuances where we are working double than our general time. There is an amount of pressure which is already there. But believe me, as in, if I may say, after 10 years of my starting of career, when I thought of doing a PhD, right, it took me almost 6 months to write a single paragraph. It was very difficult because I was already used to developing presentations and things which I was not ready to do. So it took me almost 6 months to write a single paragraph on a problem that I knew for the last 2 years, right, from the perspective. I've been working with it day in and day out. So it is a very, very difficult thing. It took me almost 7 years, right? And because of the fact that we had to do this thing parallel, but it had its own very much advantages. What I was doing in my daily life, I transformed it into academic methodology and learned and went deeper during the same time period. I know what I say might be very difficult, but is it impossible? I don't think so. Learning data science can be two ways, but within my current role, there are multiple ways to learn. I am 100% sure there is, in our day-to-day life, we come across data which we understand from daily nuances or our daily work that we do. Right? Then you pick up one of the major skill sets and then you go through it. We have natural language processing, which is also called text processing, data visualization, machine learning, data wrangling, web scraping, and then you go ahead and master it. The best way to master anything is to start on your own data. One of the things that I tell to the freshers who come to the field, right, who are just coming out of the college, and they ask the same question as well. Dr. Roy, where is data? How would I get a project if I don't do a capstone? Right? Everything that we are using today gives us data, starting from the Fitbit watch that we wear, Apple Watch that we wear, to the table fan, the light, the everything that we see around has a potential to derive data. Even the fridge comes with sensors which can give you data. Would you have a dearth of data? No. The dearth is an intention. One of the major problems that we see is, how would I go ahead and prepare the data? But this is where the crux is. In order to become a data scientist, 80% of the time should be spent on understanding the data. And if you can see it here, right, in this entire scale as an example, right, the 6 steps, the 5 steps are only data and data processing. That's it. Linear regression is just one part, just a first piece of the work. All the other ones is about understanding the data set or creating the data set. Correct? There is data in your current role. We can utilize it and we can master it. That is what data science is all. Now, this is a very interesting thought process. Should I join a startup? Should I join a big company? Should I get an internship in a bigger company, in a mid-career level? How would I change? How would people look into it? Would I be senior or would I be a junior? Right? So as I say, right, I cannot become an overnight expert in the data science field, and I do not also personally consider myself as an expert in this field. There are a lot of people, and everybody is learning, I would say, from the perspective. So data science is a very broad field. Professionals either take a job in a startup or an average small organization that gives a lot of learning ability. A lot of data is there. The problems are very discrete, right? There is a lot of things which are there to be solved, right? And which goes through a breadth of data science, right? Even taking the data out or trying to create a data set from the perspective. So startups have generally a longer and larger term advantage where you can see an entire broader perspective of the entire journey, which is comparatively very difficult, as you can see from the picture, right? However, the advantage of getting directly into a corporate, if given an opportunity in a short-term internship role, also has its own advantage. It depends upon how do you want to go from the perspective. Startups have a direct advantage of getting into a product. Both are equally important. Both requires a lot of knowledge and immense amount of labor that needs to be put. So though people say that there is an advantage for a stepping stone to get into a startup, to start with a startup, right? As an analyst or a programmer or a reporting analyst or a business analyst or a business manager, right? From the perspective where you start up from that perspective. But there are equal advantages of learning some deeper problem solving in short-term internships in established firms as well. Now, generally in our mid-career, we actually want somebody who is techno-functional, or in data world, we call it analytical functional. So both are analytics, right? So first you do planning. So what is our plan that needs to be known? Then you need to know what has happened, right? How do you do that? We have descriptive analytics as a theory, and there are multiple ways to do descriptive analytics, where you portray, do visualization, understand how the data is coming out, and so on and so on. So what has happened is actually done through a description. Why did it happen? You then diagnose what the kind of problem is. Once you understand why did it happen, then in order to preempt that, you develop a predictive analogy in that cycle. So which will tell you what will happen next, or is there a probability that this problem will appear again, basically, or in the same form, or in a form which is not seen in current or previous stages. So what will happen next is what we call as predictive analogy. What should we do? And this is the business action generally, right? This is where a lot of business domain knowledge, your storytelling ability, and your analytical pursuance come into picture, because why did it happen and what will happen next are comparatively much more gross motor skills. But here, what should we do is a very tricky game from the perspective. For example, you do understand that, say, you went through a company and you went through its company's balance sheet and so on and so forth. You found that the company is not doing well. And if the company is not doing well, there might be some problems which might be coming. What should you do, right? You know that there is something which is happening, bigger or small, right? There is a problem which might be coming in because you analyzed its reports for the last 4 years, 3 years, and so on and so forth, right? You need to go ahead and prescribe in the language that people understand, in a non-analytical language, for everybody to understand what was the problem and what are the different ways or scenarios through which you can do. For example, one of the best examples today is we have Netflix, right? It gives you recommendations. The recommendation is based upon how do you choose the movies based upon your personas, right? Right? It is very different from my persona versus my children and my wife, right? Everybody is different. So everybody gets a new recommendation when they come in or log into Netflix in a real time. That is prescription. Okay. Some of you are raising hands and are into the questions, right? We would get into the question answer session once we complete. Now, as I said, right, it's not important that you do programming or understand or master programming languages. Of course, technologically, there is an advantage that you know programming languages, you know the development tools. Some of the tools are so evolutionary that are evolving, for example, Jupyter notebooks, right? And so on and so forth. H2O.ai, Azure machine learning, right? Azure ML Studio kind of stuff. who do not require you to do too much of programming or coding. And my colleagues and friends, and since I have also developed products, find it very interesting and very useful when they come from Java background, right? And who have been into software, into their perspective. The current set of programming languages like Python, right, do have a lot of advantages, and it's comparatively much more easier to take up. However, there are some data exploration tools like Power BI, Weka, right, and so on and so forth, which has got its own advantage. So this is the data science virtual machine. We call it virtual machine because it is the first step to start everything, right? And you use all these mechanisms, starting from a development tools. You need to get the data, you need to have data ingestion tools, right? Then you explore the data, then you take a machine learning or AI tool. You, depending upon the complexity of the data, the amount of data, you either take up a big data, right? Or you get into development tools, right? Starting from a CPU to a GPU. However, the steps are very few, ideally. So you state a business problem, right? You set up data. You standardize the data. You develop a model. You publish the insights, because insights are the most important things, and other than before the steps of insight, right? If the insights are not correct, people will not be able to understand what you would like to put on the perspective. And finally, it's the measurement of the effectiveness, not only just how better is your model, it is also how would you operationalize the project and roll out, and how people can easily utilize or run your model. So ease of usage drives a lot of growth with respect to your analytical models or development activity. Again, an example, Netflix or Amazon Prime, that you see, right? Recommendation systems. It's easy. Does it tell you to develop a deep learning model, or does it become complex? But it is very easy to use. That is where your design thinking comes in. Now, a bit more technical into this background. Traditionally, when we generally started, it was not so distributed as in 20 years back, right? Technology evolved. We were sampling some data, developing some models, and creating some models. Now, there is an entire strategy which has changed, right? The data science is distributed. So we acquire data, develop model, tune the model, and deploy model all in the same time. It is running in parallel, because what we have understood is that if the flow of the data is linear, right, the model might not be brilliant or sustainable in the long run. So the more the data that you put, the more your machine learns or model learns, the effectiveness increases, right? So this is a nuance of how do you productionalize the system, and there are various ways to productionalize from the perspective, some of which you do not need to do, but it is very important for a person in a mid-career to understand how it happens. Okay. Now, once you've created a model, the next step is to create a product. Then you need the different people and the persona who is going to create the concept, and machine learning engineer, data engineer, product designer, data scientist, right? Build up the concept, and then it goes to the machine learning engineer, who is a bridge between both of them, right? This is the software part of the world. You develop it using certain operational and functional methodologies, which is called DevOps, right? Or data ops or ML ops. Operationalizing the machine learning model is ML ops, right? Simple. Operationalizing an entire development suite into a solution, either in web, mobile, API, microservice, is basically done by DevOps. There are multiple tools to be done, but as I said, it is very important to understand this entire cycle, which takes a good amount of time from the perspective. Hence, people coming from different background, and if you can put in that effort, this has a lot of larger advantage. And one of the major topics today is about 90% or 95% plus of data science prototypes or concepts do not see the light of the day, or which do not create solutions. It takes a good amount of time, investment, people, and so on and so forth, because of the fact that there is a disconnect between the left and the right. Hence, it would be much advantageous if somebody can pick up both. Does not need to be master both from the perspective. But an understanding gives you a lot of upper hand. Now, people, it's only about these four different things. It is about the people, it's about the process, it's about the technology, and the derivations, or we call it insights. Very key things. Only technology cannot solve the problem unless you involve domain experts. So technology is just an enabler, which is programming and so on and so forth. Domain experts need to be part of the system. So that is where domain expertise becomes very important, because that is where the concept of human in the loop comes in data science. Okay. Human being should be there in the system to power the technology to sustain. Every problem is unique, but reusability will try to drive the adoption. That's very important. Reusability is the key thing in doing things. You develop once, you can utilize it to multiple pieces. Right. Insights and derivations are sustainable and learnable engines that needs to be done. Yeah. This is the crux of people, process, technology, and derivation. The derivations are again subjected to people. Finally, it's our own guru that we have been speaking about long. If you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you have to love this field, and you have to immerse yourself. That is where everything lies in. I am very happy to answer any amount of questions that you might have. And you can please connect me online as well, right? If I know the answer, I would definitely be able to. Thank you so much for having the patience to listen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. We'll just wait for some time and start the Q&A round. I request all the audience to please type your questions in the Q&A box, and if you're not able to do so, then please type them in the chat box and we'll take them up one by one. We have one question. Digital marketing has been penetrating mass data, which has led to its success. Do you foresee stronger compliances and ethical bodies coming into play in near future that might determine how do companies misuse the data?
So till now, what we discussed is the importance of the data. We all know there is an importance of the data. Now, I would try to draw that same analogy, hopefully, where an atomic bomb or a nuclear bomb, right, can devastate cities. We know that. It can also power cities by giving it electricity, right? It is not different. The way of utilizing it becomes different, of course. Hence, governance and ethics are extremely important all across the world. Things are going in through in India as well, right? So we have compliances like GDPR, India data protection privacy, and so on and so forth, which are going in, and so on and so forth. It will be very important for a lot of people who are in this group today. Once you go ahead and learn, you would become ambassadors on what is good and what is bad, because you would be going in to tell a product owner that this is the way we should not take it. For example, right? You go ahead, in order to doing a facial recognition, you do not need to store the faces generally. There are algorithms through which you just need to store my face as a number. Why do you need to physically store my face? The models that we developed are all about the features, and my feature is very different from Sugandha's features. We both are different. Even if you clone my face, there will be strategic differences, and there are very deep algorithms today, right, which can be used to go down to a microest level. Hence, to summarize it, basically, ethical and governance norms are coming up. It is evolving. What is good and what is bad, we are trying to summarize, but it's still a long way to go. However, data is here, and we all do understand that. For the last 2 years, right, post-corona, human beings are not able to run. Only data is there. We all are staying at home, right? The only thing which is roaming is data. Look at the organizations. Look at what assets Facebook, Twitter, Netflix, and all of them have. The biggest asset is the data. So you cannot discreditize that. Yes, governance is important. I hope I have been able to answer.
No, thank you, sir. Pooja asks, can you please share how Google Analytics path analysis work for an app data analysis?
So in Google Analytics, we try to track as like other mechanisms, right? Google has its own entire cloud suite, right? GCP, which is the Google Cloud platform. Google Analytics is used to trend in marketing data, do SEOs, right? Which keywords are working, which websites are working, how much of traffic is coming in. So Google does it for you, right? Very pre-customized format. You do not need to do it. However, how do you create it for your own is very important for you to understand. There are several tutorials on this regard, right, from the perspective, which is comparatively much more easier ones. And like Google, there are other tools as well which can do this similar work from Google. But again, what is more important is you do understand the fundamentals of what you are actually trying to derive, basically. So are you looking at the click-through rate, right? Are you trying to increase the click-through rate of particular thing? You have created a brand. How would you market it? Is Instagram better? Is Facebook better? Or LinkedIn is better? What is your audience? What are your persona? Those all the things needs to be created as a strategy. Otherwise, Google Analytics is just a tool. So that is more important. Yeah.
Bhaskar asked, how much challenging your journey from manufacturing to digital marketing?
To be sincere, Bhaskar, no. In HSBC, I work that was my starting of my job. Right? I used to work on the actuaries in mortgage and credit scoring. When I landed up, right, I was in consulting. I was in Hewlett Packard, right? So I worked on multiple different kind of business, enterprise sales, marketing. When I landed up to marketing, in manufacturing itself, manufacturing is a broad industry. In that industry, there are different verticals. Every industry has its own verticals, which starts from sales and marketing, production, engineering, and so on and so forth. So engineering, which is much, and I am not an engineer, right? From the perspective, if you look at my life cycle, I'm not an engineer. What I did learn in this due course is how machines function, and I learned it to make the world understand that you can make the machines better, or you can sell them. I learned how a car is made or a vehicle is created. I learned the physics behind it because I loved physics, right? And it's just an intuition. But ultimately, how do you sell the car? Who would be the dealers? How would you market it? What are the customers? What are the kind of personas who will take it? Which kind of car should be recommended to somebody? Those are the all natures of digital marketing. Now the digital manufacturing is also right. So digital twins and so on and so forth is something that has got through in the last decade or so. Yeah.
Thank you. Shamir asked, AI and ML might be creating new jobs at the lower level, but due to this, out of senior level profiles are vanishing. How to bridge the gap on learning considering future is changing fast? There are predictions that around 3 lakh jobs will go in next 2 years due to AI and ML coming up along with the fintech.
When we put up some numbers like 3 lakh jobs are going out, let's try to understand what will go. As I said, of course, data science is a niche field. But as like a niche field, even when the software booms happened, right? The internet boom happened. Even internet was not easy. Is it still easy today? No, right? Now, what will not be there? What can AI automate? Please try to understand. AI is always dependent upon human being. So I come from an autonomous driving world, right? So been part of some of them, good work being happened and so on and so forth. Please do understand that the level 5 automation, which is self-driving car, is still not yet achieved. However, if you look at most of the vehicles which are coming in through like electric as well, right? You have cruise controls, you have automatic parking. There is a lot of automation which is happening, which is helping a human being to drive a car, right? So that means you are utilizing your car as an office, and you would be enjoying the car as a pleasure. But artificial intelligence cannot, as of yet, cannot take you to the backseat in a real driving scenario. Because human brain is much more sophisticated than a neural network. And it's not possible to, it is not 100% possible to do it. There are always scenarios which you do. Think about this perspective. You drive your vehicle on the road. There is a human being and a cat. There is a difference between both of them. The machine would be programmed to save the human being. But you very well know that a cat is much more faster. So you would go by the same speed, or you may be decreasing. So imagine the amount of neural networks which are driving in your brain. It is extremely impossible for the machine to drive that kind of decision. So in short, jobs cannot go away. Yes, of course, there are things which are done by robotic process automation and so on and so forth, right? From the perspective, which are things which can be automated, right? You get 2,000 emails in a day you are a marketing head or a director, right? I can write an algorithm through RPA or a process workflow to automate and tell me that these were the most important emails and this is what the crux of the email is. But what to do with that email is something that you have to do, right? Which email to prioritize, what to answer is something that you have to judge. An automation algorithm, even if it is highly sophisticated, cannot match the human skill. Of course, if AI is evolving, we all have to evolve. That is important.
There are multiple questions related to careers, so I'll just take them up.
Sure.
Chandra asked, please let us know the key points to look while switching career from technical role from MNC to a management functional role in a mid-sized service-based company.
Since both are technical, so general shift is in a technological space. So when you shift to a service organization, the expectation is that you are quite good in techno-functional abilities. Now, do I need to program every day when I am getting into a managerial role? No. But when you're servicing a client, you should be knowing what are the developers doing. You would have engineers under, right? You would have business analysts, right? And so on and so on. Front end, back end, and so on and so on, if I may give that kind of answer, right? You would have to check their daily work and send it to the client, because you need to understand what the client needs are, how the solutions being written by the developers, right, translates it in terms of quality, in terms of timelines, in terms of one of the major things which initially becomes very difficult for kids to adopt when they are in the 0 to, let's say, 4 to 5 years of experience, is the right amount of discipline, basically, right? Because sometimes we feel we can send the email in the next 2 hours, but the person is looking forward to an acknowledgement. Yes, I acknowledge that I understood that I need to give this model in the next 2 hours. Even that is quite more enough. And then you trace back to the engineer to do the job. So techno-functional abilities are very much important. And other things like, for example, you, as and when you move up the ladder, depending upon where do you want to position yourself, you need to be technological agnostic. You need to understand business, how do you make money, or how services work, right? From the perspective, what are the key things which are required? So those are the essential aspects that needs to be done. So it's a business and a technological role. Both are very important to play.
Thank you, sir. Indranil asked, as there is a disconnect between concept, production, functionality, and technologies due to skills gap and other factors, more than 80% of data projects are failing. Where is data science heading, and what are the opportunities?
So, Indranil, that's a fantastic question. As I said, right, more than 90% of them had been failed. And the key reason is that when we develop the prototype, right, from the perspective, I was just sharing this with you, right? This clearly elaborates that there is a lot of things that needs to be learned. So if the concept is a data science concept, as I said, right, the bridge between both these two worlds, one is a data science and one is a software development, has not yet been bridged. Not all the software engineers do understand the data science, and not data scientists, right, do understand how to actually create APIs which will become part of the software engineering to become a solution. You require experts in this between, right, who can take this concept to a solution, which means you need to be bridged between these two worlds, and it is still disconnected. It takes a lot of time, right? Because there are very less professionals who understand both the worlds in that space. So the opportunities are galore, because if you are good in one of the aspects, you can pick up another. The best way that I did is basically I spent time and then I took a break of a year and worked with some startups, right? I still indulge into that. So I work with startups, right? Advise them, and what learning that I gather, and I utilize my weekends and my extra space of time in order to solve the problem. And what I gain is this entire bridge, right? And that is what I said. If you are good in technology, this part of the world, some of them which you can pick up along the lines, you need to get the nuances of this, or vice versa.
Thank you, sir. Can you highlight one tool or skills from each aspect of data science which can be taken up and learned with a smaller curve?
As I said, there are two ways of working in data science. Data science is always tool agnostic. Okay, and you can see the amount of tools are increasing and so on and so on. However, the methodology remains the same. You know the business problem. You have got out some data. right? You have found out some data. You need to put it somewhere. So you need to know a database, some amount of data, right? You don't need to be a cloud expert to start with. Start with your own basic machine, right? Click the biggest advantage, the entire data science model you can do in Microsoft Excel. It is easy to do it. But once you start utilizing it, for example, we have been using my SQL Server to generate data, get data, and so on and so forth. Things have evolved. Once you connect them, right, with non-programming tools, for example, that is where the cloud tools have evolved. And believe me, it does not take too much of time to learn these tools. For example, Azure ML Studio. It's a workflow level tool. That is what I showed you here. This is a workflow level tool. But you need to know what you are trying to solve. That's what is more important. Right? Take the step, and all the tools does almost the same thing. But if you do not know what are you trying to solve, then it becomes a problem. It does not need you to do programming in a lot of cases, but you still need to have fundamentals of data science, which are very clear.
Animesh asks, so we study various methods, various tools and models, but maximum industries in India doesn't utilize these expertise, still in the conventional and legacy system. How to find or introduce or convince these organizations to move forward to use these technologies and functionalities?
Very formidable question, Anish. Actually, no one wants more. Let me be very sincere about it. Does Netflix come out of the TV and tell you that we are using a deep neural network with 7 layers? Does it go ahead and tell you? It's just a click of a button. It tells you that according to your last viewed movie, these are the next 3 movies that you can watch. So the outcome is very important. What does that mean? That means that in data science, since data science is so vast, there are easier ways to do things. For example, deep learning, right? Or a neural network is actually a function of linear regression, right? Logistic regression, because you need to turn the weights, right? So conventional methodologies will still be remaining because it is easier to use. It is your and people like all of us, this enthusiastic group of people today here, their job is to convert and showcase them that this is what is possible to do things. Till the time you show somebody that this is possible, people would not be able to be keen about doing things. If you have solved that kind of problem in the past, it would be much more easier for you to convince. But again, do you really go ahead and buy everything that you want and that you see? No, right? You take a lot of decision and judgment, right? So until unless you physically touch it or you visually see it, a mathematical model does not generally in a real time or a business world has any sense, right? If Edison would have not invented the bulb, he would have not understood the variance of electricity. Otherwise, it's just a discharge. Bulb was an invention which created a landmark. We all love it. So that is important. Create the bulb. Don't focus on the electricity. That is where we fail. But as an enthusiast, you need to understand how the electricity flows. Otherwise, the bulb will not glow.
Abhijit asked how automation is going to impact the role of humans as data science experts is coming in 10 years. Experts in coming 10 years.
So automation will become intelligent. So what is automation doing today? And there is a lot of work which is going around in this space. We use a lot of robotic automation, process automation, machine analytics, data engineering, and so on, right? Heavy data engineering. A lot of clients that we do work with them today. The automation needs to evolve to become intelligent, and the best way to do it is through human beings, right? So as and when we evolve into more of it, For example, let's say you are creating an spam filter email methodology, or let's say you're creating an HR workflow, right? From the perspective. So a person is getting a joining letter, right? Or let's say you are a marketing person, you are in the sales of a product, you are part of a showroom, right? So you create a digitalized mechanism, you create a step, right? Through which the customer can go ahead and choose. However, what will automation do is that it will look at the form that I have filled up. It will never ask me any question and start recommending me, and that will kill my experience. So data science is all about experience, as I just said, right? Either I can touch or I can view, right? It's a lot about the experience that you're delivering. For example, I am creating a survey to understand my customer. I should not ask the same question next, right? From the perspective. For example, I ask you, how would you like to drive? And you said, I like highway driving at 120. And suddenly say, how many speed breakers that you get in a day? Is that an appropriate question? You are driving on the highway. Generally, you are driving on a national highway. My question should be able to predict or would be able to understand that this person is not enthusiastic in a city. But since the questions are formed in such a way, you generally do not understand. So that is where, in this scenario, natural language understanding came into it. So understanding has become an experience. So automation needs to evolve and become intelligent.
We'll just take up one last question, sir, for today.
Sure.
Dr. Roy, how do mid-level managers with expertise in certain domain transition to data science, especially non-IT guys? Do you suggest implementation of data science in their core domain expertise?
See, if you're from non-IT background, the domain will play a very, very vital, as I have just said. You do not need to be 100% IT savvy, but you need to have the passion to get into the data science and problem solving ability. So problem solving ability and analytical thought process, the process to solve a problem, you need to understand. And that needs to be inculcated. How? By practice. And a rigorous practice in that respect. That is extremely important. You would definitely be able to get into that transition. But without, and a lot of people tell me, and a similar question being asked, right, is on the same lines, is that should I leave my job and do something and so on and so forth? No, as in organizations like Emeritus and so on and so forth, they will give you those kind of advantage, right? Join them. Don't lose that flow, because till the time you are working, please do understand, you know that you have a good amount of data. Even if your department, wherever you are working, do not have use cases to solve, there are other departments in your organization. Somebody has something, right? Even if it's just a practical level, right? Knowledge can be begged, borrowed, or spent. So to gain knowledge, you can do anything, and you should do everything. That is very important. And then there are various ways. There are tools. There are amazing organizations like Emeritus who can help you in gaining that knowledge and power and give you that focused path where you don't deviate and you have a process which makes you successful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roy, for this informative session today. I am sure it will help a lot of our learners in their future careers. Thank you so much to all the learners as well for attending the session and for your questions. We tried answering as many as possible, but due to time constraint, we will try and revert the leftover questions via email. We will see you again next week. Stay safe and have a happy weekend. Thank you so
much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and thank you for all your patience. Have a great weekend.